Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ma'am. So today we're going to talk about the object. So the object is a noun, pronoun, or phrase that prepares a person or thing being affected by the action. And an argument is known as a DP, complement, or determinant phrase, complement. And it must immediately follow the verb. For example, Peter put the bike in the shed. So if you change the object, it will turn out like Peter put in the shed the bike, so it will become grammatical. To identify the object, it always uses the accusative case. For example, I saw him. Use the accusative case. It uses his, her, and them instead of he, she, and they. Because he, she, and they are nominative and subjective, and it will make the grammar and grammatical. And second, it can passivize. Because from the active form, like this, we also, when it follows the SVO. To make it passive, we make it OBS, so it will turn out like when you was to. And objects will not only follow verbs, it also follow prepositions. For example, I look at him. So, at is our preposition, and him is our object. And there are two types of object. We have the indirect object and the direct object. The direct object is the primary receiver of the action. It answers to what and who. For example, she hugged the teddy bear, so she hugged the what? The teddy bear as our direct object. An indirect object, it is a person or thing that receives the direct object. It answers to or for who. For example, he gave me a gift, so the gift is our direct object, and me is the indirect object because I received the gift. That's all. Thank you.
Everyone, in continuation about the discussion of object in a sentence, we'll focus on two things, which is identifying the position of object in a sentence and recognizing how object appear after the verb. First, we must know what an object is. So an object is a word or phrase that receives the action of the verb. So to identify the object in a sentence, we must find the verb and ask what or whom after the verb, and there we will find the object in a sentence. For example, Peter put the bike in the shed. So the word put there is the verb, and if we're going to ask Peter put what, so the answer would be the bike, and the bike is the object in a sentence. Next we have we all saw Wendy. So the word saw there is the verb, and if we're going to ask, we all saw whom? So the answer would be Wendy, and the Wendy is the object in the sentence. About the position, in English, object has a privileged position. This means that object must come immediately after the verb, before anything else. Like for example, prepositional phrase cannot come before the object. And if we're going to change the order of the sentence, this would be ungrammatical. For example, Peter put the bike in the shed. This one is correct because it follows the subject-verb-object rule in a sentence. But this one, Peter put in the shed the bike, is ungrammatical because if we're going to identify each of them, Peter is the subject, put is the verb, and in the shed is a prepositional phrase, which is wrong. So basically, object receives the action of the verb, and it must come immediately after the verb, and we must ask what or whom, and then we will spot the object in a sentence.
This report is about passive voice, where object becomes the subject. In the example active sentence, the teacher praised her focuses on the doer, the teacher. In passive, she is praised by the teacher. The focus shifts to she, the receiver. Object moves to front, and pronoun changes. Her becomes she, and him becomes he. Structure is always be, or verb auxiliary, plus past participle, like is praised. We use passive when the doer is unknown, not important, or we want to focus more about the receiver.
difference between direct object and prepositional object, including how accusative case is used in object pronouns. Now first, let's define what direct object is. So direct object is a noun or pronoun that directly receives the action of the verb. Now for example, the sentence, I saw her. The word her here is the direct object because it receives the action of the word saw. Now, an important feature of direct objects is that they take the accusative case when we use pronouns. That means we say him, her, or them instead of he, she, or they. So the sentence I saw her is correct, while the sentence I saw she, it is incorrect. Now let's move on to a prepositional object. So by definition, prepositional object is the noun or pronoun that comes after a preposition. Now, for example, the sentence, I looked at him. So the word him here is the object of the preposition at. Just like in direct objects, prepositional objects also use the accusative case in pronouns. That's why we say at him instead of at he. So this sentence, I looked at he, is incorrect. Now, what is the main difference between them? The key difference is their position and function. A direct object directly follows the verb and receives the action, while a prepositional object follows a preposition and completes its meaning. Another important difference is in sentence structure, especially in passive voice. Direct object can become the subject of a passive sentence. Now, for example, the sentence, we saw Wendy becomes, Wendy was seen. However, prepositional objects only sometimes move and not all of them can become subjects in passive constructions. Now, to summarize, both direct objects and prepositional objects receive the action in a sentence and use the accusative case in pronouns. However, direct objects are directly affected by the verb, while prepositional objects are connected through a preposition.